I understand that we do need to amend the agenda this evening to add an item.
Amend the agenda to add TA 2022-02 taproom UDO amendment to the public hearing section of the agenda.
Second.
Not finished.
Oh, then I withdraw my
She
second.
heard tap room and got excited.
I did.
It is listed under first read of ordinance, but through a typographical error, it was omitted from the public hearing agenda. However, it has been taken and has been properly advised as a public hearing properly advertised as a public hearing item in the DeKalb Champion, with the hearing to take place on April 14th, 2022.
Very good.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to add an item under public hearing for taproom UDO amendment. All in favor? Very good. I might add that Councilman Vice is joining us this evening from home, so he is, I don't think he's on the big screen, but he's on the computer looking at me right there. So.
Yes, and I can hear everything. Thank you, everyone.
Very good.
You having a beer?
All right.
Absolutely not.
At the tap room already.
All right, we'll call the public hearing to order. Rules of order for public hearing zoning matters. The hearing shall be presided over by the mayor. After calling the hearing to order, the mayor shall request that the parcels of property which are subject of the zoning proposal be identified and read. Following such identification and reading, the development director's recommendation shall be presented. The mayor and city council shall cause the director's written recommendation to be made part of the record. Proponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning the zoning decision. If all 10 minutes are not used, the proponent's remaining time may be reserved for rebuttal. Opponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation, data, evidence, and opinion concerning each zoning decision. The presentation times may not be reduced, but may be extended by majority vote, provided they are expanded equally for proponents and opponents. Anyone wishing to speak must come to the microphone, give their name and address to the city clerk, fill out the card that's at the podium and give that to the clerk as well. And do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. All right, so public hearing agenda amendment, TA 2022-02 taproom UDO amendment. So are we going to go over this now? You got this? Okay. Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Council just recently adopted an amendment to the alcohol ordinance to allow tap rooms under limited circumstances. This is a way to complete that regulatory framework such that the zoning ordinance supports tap rooms in limited locations. So specifically, the amendment before you adds a definition and supplemental use regulations to allow tap room establishments. It also amends the Downtown Chamblee Town Center PUD pattern book to allow tap rooms only within the PUD district. So the definition that is proposed for tap room mirrors that which is in the alcohol ordinance, and that is before you, about the dedicated an establishment with dedicated beer and wine offerings with certain restrictions as per the alcohol ordinance. So we worked hard to not have separate ordinances, but refer back to the primary one, which is the alcohol ordinance. But it's allowed now, it's being specified in the zoning code. We did add two small supplemental use regulations, that is to prohibit it being associated with fuel sales. We don't want convenience stores to be confused when if they are selling alcohol. This is a separate use and distinct, so it's prohibited from having any fuel sales adjacent or associated with this use. And it also addresses outdoor equipment, so it prohibits unenclosed outdoor equipment with the business. The pattern book, the PUD pattern book, includes and is now added as a permitted use tap room. That's the big change there in red. We add the word tap room as a permitted use. And then to clarify within the UDO itself, So the rest of the zoning ordinance, we added the definition there, and we clarified that and added it to the permitted use table, and all you see is that it's blank. It's not permitted. But we did add a note. We don't want people confused. Well, you put it there, you must have meant to it be allowed somewhere. So we're referencing the reader to the PUD where it is allowed. And if there is a future PUD that wishes permission to also have that use, then that would be specific to that PUD, and it would be included in their pattern book for you all to deliberate and consider independent. And if you approve that, it would go to first read.
So, I just want to be clear. Our downtown is a PUD.
Correct, there is a PUD district definition, and associated with that is the regulating book, that pattern book that has additional and specific rules and requirements.
Yes. Okay, just want to be clear.
And that is the only place that is contemplated today for the allowing tap rooms.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this item? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Very good. This will come back up for council comments under first read, I believe. Anyone wishing to exit the public hearing?
Motion to exit the public hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second to exit the public hearing. All in favor? Very good. Can't see Elmer, but... All right, we'll move right into the announcements and presentations. Oh, we got that delay thing going there, don't we? So just remember, so here's what I'll do. I'll tap on the counter to give you a heads up. Then you got 3 seconds to respond.
Thank you.
You got it.
Sorry about that.
Did we have any announcements and presentations this evening? Very good. Under staff action items, we have the council public hearing work session for March the 10th. Anything from council on this?
No.
City council regular meeting March the 15th. Anything?
Nope.
City council called meeting March the 25th. City council called meeting on March the 26th. Very good. Under, yes, very good. Under Downtown Development Authority appointments, who's got that? Nothing?
You should a motion.
I believe council wishes to go ahead and make a motion tonight to make these two appointments.
Motion to appoint Matt Sitter and Sonai Colley to the DDA. Second.
I have a motion and a second to appoint Matt Sitter and Sinai Collin to the DDA. All in favor? I should have asked, is there any discussion?
Need Elmer here to keep narrow.
Yeah, Elmer, you're supposed to be here to keep me on track. No discussion?
Tuesday.
Got it. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the URA appointments. Any discussion from council on this?
Just a question on how it works. So we are the URA as far as that goes.
So council normally serves as, council is the URA, and generally speaking in the past, the mayor has always been the chair and the mayor pro tem has always been the vice chair. Last year it was Eric and John.
Okay.
So I would propose to keep it that way unless,
Yep. So thanks for clearing that up for me.
Yep.
And we do need action on that tonight because we will have a URA meeting on Tuesday night.
Very good. So I'll need a motion. Go ahead.
Kind of winging this because
All right.
I wasn't ready. Motion to appoint mayor and council to the URA, specifically the mayor as the chair and the mayor pro tem as the vice chair.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second to appoint the mayor as chair and the mayor pro tem as vice chair. Any discussion on that item?
I think I do have some discussion, I have a question about it, and this question is really more for your edification, Jimmy. What has the URA done to date?
The URA has, it's a state-allowed authority. It has worked as a financing tool in the past, and we do have bonds issued from the URA for the public safety building as well as the city hall. So there's 2 bond issuance from that, from the URA.
Okay,
I'm edified, thank you.
you're welcome. I needed the reminder too.
Moreover.
Very good. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Very good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the PAC council member appointment. Are we going to do that tonight or on Tuesday? Does it matter? Do I want to knock that out, or you want to do it on Tuesday?
Let's knock it out. Let's knock it out. Motion to appoint Elmer Beath as the council representative to the Public Art Commission.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to appoint Councilmember Vice as the PAC council member appointment. Any discussion on that?
Is that okay with you, Elmer? Elmer, rather?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Thank you very much, Leslie.
All right. Seeing no more discussion, all in favor? And that is unanimous. And then lastly, we have the Airport Advisory Board recommendation. I believe we received the applications on that today, so that'll need to be kind of reviewed over the weekend. And then you guys will need to come back on Tuesday to make that appointment.
And just as a reminder that this is a DeKalb County appointment, so we're making a recommendation to DeKalb County.
Very good.
Has the window for applications closed?
I'll have to double check. It either closed today or it's closing tomorrow. I'm not sure.
Let me get a head nod from over there.
I think it was end of day today.
It closed today.
Okay.
It closed today.
All right. Any other discussion on that item?
I mean, I can vote on it today if you want to, or you just want to kick it to Tuesday.
I've not even looked at the applicants yet.
We'll
but,
wait till Tuesday then.
We don't vote.
But yeah, I don't vote, so.
We'd like to get your take on it though, so.
Under city manager items, we have the Questica and Invisio public dashboard.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a presentation tonight from Joseph, who will be speaking about the new strategic planning public dashboard that's available. Joseph.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So I just want to take a little time tonight to go over some of the budgeting and strategic plan resources that I've been working on for the city since I started last year. So starting with Invisio, our public-facing dashboard. So Invisio is our reporting and tracking software for the city's operational strategic plan, which was passed in 2019. Last June when I started, we took off with the implementation of this software program. I met with all the department directors to go over the different initiatives and action items that they wanted to add to the software program, that showcase the different initiatives and things that they have going on that are contributing to the plan and the overall priorities and goals that you guys have set. And so then going into the main dashboard overview. So on the main homepage, you'll see the purpose, mission, and values featured towards the beginning of the page as you're scrolling down that were established in the 2019 plan. There's also, you'll see the high-level plan progress as well, which is featured on the next slide with those 5 main priorities that were established in the plan. And then there's a legend at the bottom as well with those, shows what the status indicators represent on the website. So you can see that gray is status pending, green is on track, some disruption is yellow, and so on. And then Those are the 5 strategic plan priorities that were established in 2019 that you all revisited a couple weeks ago in the strategic plan retreat. So you can see in the image there, I know it's a little bit small, but each one of those squares represents a different priority, and there's a status bar underneath that's featured on the website that shows the overall progress and the different status indicator of how things are going within each of those strategic priorities. And so then if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you can click into, for example, the create a greater sense of community identity, priority A, and you can see all the different plan goals. And so there you'll see the description, there's a progress percentage that shows the overall progress of what's been completed for the goal, and then the status as well. And then within each of those, you can click even further to get a more granular look. And you can look at all the different initiatives that contribute to those specific goals within the priority. So this is one example I pulled from the new City Hall. This is an update that was submitted a couple months ago. And so you'll see it has that percentage, green, we're on track. And then there's the latest update, which is just a brief, sort of narrative that provides the accomplishments, if there's any roadblocks, next steps. And then there are some checklist items that kind of show the general timeline for a lot of the different projects. So those will appear there as well. Another cool feature within Visio is that you can actually build other dashboards. So this is very much so in the works, but I'm also working on creating a capital projects dashboard as well that will hopefully visualize the capital project budget data for each of those projects to show the general percentage of how much that project budget has been completed, the timeline, and other general information like that that'll be available to the public. I'll also add as well for the strategic plan dashboard, it is currently on the city website under the government tab. You can click there and there's the strategic plan dashboard link. And then the last little element of Invisio I just wanted to briefly show is the department analytics. I apologize that one screenshot's a little blurry. But for all the city departments that are featured on that drop-down list, there is a monthly department update that's there as well, that shows the just different analytics that are normally tracked or were previously tracked in the PDF report that was sent to council, just different metrics that departments track that contribute to their overall progress related to the strategic plan, and there's a little strategic statement as well for each of the departments on there for the community to see. And then just an update for 2022 strategic planning. I know we had the retreat a couple weeks ago. So obviously some of those goals within the strategic plan priorities that we visited at that time, will change. And just wanted to update you all that staff and SGR will work with you to finalize the language on the new strategic plan in the coming months. And then segueing into more of, the city budget, Questica is the city's budgeting software that I also worked with staff to implement last year. Prior to Questica, we would send staff a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and be like, enter all your budget data here. And then that would be the way, and we'd compile all those spreadsheets and, piece together the city budget that way. But now with Questica, we've been able to, really streamline a lot of that. It's one portal. There's the general layout, so staff can log on there, enter, and access all the different costing centers and accounts for their specific departments, and then they submitted their budget budget requests last year. So yeah, and another resource that Questica provides as well is the Open Book site, which is also on the city website under in the finance department. And this is just a budget visualization website which takes all of that budget data that we input into Questica and creates cool visuals. Like you'll see here, this is a shot of the general fund, so you can see percentage. It creates a pie chart and breaks down each of the departments. It's a little blurry, but yeah. But yeah, it's showing each one of the departments and what percentage their budget makes up of the entire general fund. And you can do that for each of the in each of the budgets. There's this percentage. There's also just a more tabular look at the budget and other charts as well that you can utilize to visualize city budgets. So yeah. I'm going to...
And I'll just add that Joseph's done a great job on this. Right now, with our website the way it is sometimes difficult to find, but as we update the website in the coming months, we will push these kind of front and center so people can find the dashboard and the strategic plan more easily.
Thank you.
Any questions from council for Joseph or Steph? Very good. Good job. You good, Elmer?
Good, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, the 2021 Q4 Budget Amendment Resolution. Anybody got?
Good evening, Council. My name is Julie Pirro, Finance Director. I'm actually going to give you just a brief overview of our unaudited numbers before I go into the last final quarter amendments. I just wanted to give you a high-level view of where we ended the year. Our audit does start on April 25th. So as you remember, our original general fund budget started at 23.7. We had 3 amendments last year that totaled a change in the budget of $352,000. And our final budget ended at a little over $24 million. And our projected expenditures are at 23.9. So we stayed within budget. Again, this is just a high summary, fund summary, unaudited. Shows you that the general fund finished 1.6, and then I broke out some of the other larger funds that we have. Our SPLOS, ARPA funds is the government funds that we received, stormwater, sanitation, and all of our special revenue funds, which includes E911, confiscated assets, hotel, motel, etc. So the only one that actually finished with an overage is stormwater, and this is just a true revenues to expenditures. So their overage will be covered by their fund balance, which they requested money in the budget last year to cover those overages. This next slide is just showing you a little bit of our cash flow analysis. I'm not sure how do you do the pointer? It doesn't work. Okay. I'll give you the 2019, our fund balance, and this is just for the general fund. We finished at 15.7. 2020, we finished at 17.6. But to remember, we did have a CARES Act that offset that, so we would have been a little bit below 2019 had we not received those funds from the federal government. And then this year, we're projected to be at 18.2. So with all that being said, now let's go into the budget amendments. So because of our fiscal policies, financial policies, we are actually asked departments to stay within their departmental budget. And I just showed you that obviously the general fund did finish in the positive, but there were a few departments that did go over budget, so we need to amend them prior to us starting our audit in a couple of weeks. So the 4 departments are Public Works, Planning, Municipal Court, and other financing uses, and I'll explain what that means. So we're requesting council to allow us to use our fund balance to cover the overages, which totaled $416,000. So these are the 4 lines that went over. Obviously, we had some landscaping increases due to shortages and increasing costs. Our planning services, the CPL, we had some of the contracts had an overage. Also in court, we started the bailiff program last year. And then the transfer is actually a final lease payment for the sanitation trucks. Also, last year we had an amendment to change the Fund 285 technology fee due to our an audit recommendation. We had gone over our fund balance, so we needed to amend the budget. Unfortunately, we left off two of the expense lines, so two of our budgets right now are out of balance. So we need to correct that as well. So we're requesting that we lower the general fund balance, general fund expenditures by $25,000 since we lowered the revenues for the amendment back in September. And for 2022, we do have a change. There's no
Julie,
effect
if we
to
could
the...
take a brief stop there.
Okay.
And just that item of the agenda, and just...
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. They run together.
Any questions from council thus far? We'll move into the next item on the agenda.
Okay. So the 2022 budget amendment actually is, there's no effect to the budget. We're actually basically asking for a reappropriation of funding from the general fund to the sanitation fund. After talking to the auditors, they requested that we moved the money from general fund to the actual sanitation fund because we were dealing with fixed assets and depreciation. So the amendment that was brought forth to you in February, we're just asking to reallocate it to Fund 540, which is the sanitation fund. So we're going to do a transfer to increase the revenues for sanitation and then increase the expenditure line in the vehicles and sanitation and then decrease the two lines in the general fund. And that's all I have, if you have any questions.
I'm good, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Chamblee election.
Thank you, Mayor. We've talked about this several times this year. Based on the community feedback, which we provided to you, and some of the discussions, I wanted to show you kind of the final, these were blue and gold B. It seemed like that was the second variant with the change of the districts between 4 and 3 to more closely reflect Plaster and Road is here. And so these are the two options. If you would like to let us know how to proceed, we need to draft an ordinance for the council to adopt new election districts moving forward.
John, do we need to vote on that tonight, or you just need direction?
I just need to know which direction to move forward so that we can put an ordinance in front of you to vote. It can be by consent or by vote, however you want to share which of these options you would like to move forward with.
I would, based on discussions, I would move to the gold map, the gold B map specifically. If that is the gold B map, then that's the one.
I'm inclined to agree. Are we making a motion, or are we just...
No,
I
we're
think
just reaching consensus.
I'm inclined to agree.
And just a reminder, that was the most balanced map, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I support that as well.
I support it as well.
Very good.
Okay. We will endeavor to have an ordinance for Tuesday night. If we are not able to get the ordinance completed in time, then this will be on the agenda next month, but we will try to get it on the agenda next week.
Very good. Next up on the agenda is the temporary easement for 2140 Chamblee Tucker Road, that Sky Harbor project. John?
Usually happens when there's a road or something involved. I don't have slides. So this item is before you as a proposed agreement on the Sky Harbor project. They are on the corner of Hood and Chamblee Tucker. The topography was such that the front of their entrances required access, stair access. It would have encroached slightly into our existing right-of-way. The city does not have a practice of allowing any encroachments in our right-of-way. On the hood side of this property, there is space that made sense and appears to be in the public interest to transfer to the city to realign the sidewalk better. And so the proposal is to swap a one-for-one swap of the area that they're encroaching on the Chamblee Tucker side to allow that to be transferred to the owner and adjust our right-of-way on that side with minimal impact, and swap so that the Hood Avenue is dedicated to the Hood Avenue side. There's a proportional amount dedicated to the city, and that will include improvements on the Hood Avenue sidewalk. What's before you is actually a request to do this as a temporary easement, because the project actually requires, any kind of easement like this and dedication for you to consider requires around a 2-month period of public notification. And given the interest of this project for the affordable housing and the interest in the project, we are coming before you to request a temporary easement to allow them to move forward. And then this would expire. The legal language before you says that it does expire, to give the council sufficient time to consider a permanent transfer if you so choose to, after the public notification period. So it's a request to approve the temporary easement that's before you, with legal agreement and exhibits. I guess that would be for Tuesday's decision.
Very good. Is that it? Questions from council? All right, seeing none. Next item on the agenda is under Public Works. It's the Stormwater Utility Analysis.
Good evening. Okay. Well, Julie provided a perfect segue into this presentation for us. I'm here tonight with David Morgan. He is the consultant we've been working with for POND since about late 2020. POND began on our stormwater infrastructure locate and assessment, which has now evolved into a stormwater utility analysis. And one thing to note is prior to coming to POND, David did work for the city of Roswell in their stormwater department, and actually he and his team did the stormwater master plan. So he has a really good understanding of city budget and city stormwater as an asset. So I'll pass it off to him.
Thank you, Courtney. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks so much for this opportunity to present to you all tonight. As Courtney mentioned, we were hired to analyze your stormwater utility, take a look at the funding, take a look at the funding mechanisms and the expenditures in the utility, and then make some recommendations. So tonight's presentation, I've got a lot to cover, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I'm sure there'll be questions when I'm finished, but we're going to take a look at the current rate structure, your current budget. We'll also take a look at how your utility compares to other utilities in the area. We'll also look at the various funding scenarios we looked at, as well as the recommendations that we're making. So your current rate structure is defined in your current UDO ordinance, which, as you know, I think is in the process of being modified at the moment. I think you're heading for a second reading. But this is straight from your UDO, and this establishes a $4 per month per single-family residential unit, which is a call it equivalent residential unit, and we've got a definition further on in the presentation for that. But if your rate is $4 per single-family residential unit, you've got a half of a ERU for your multifamily dwellings, which basically equates, so your $4 per month equates to a $48 annual amount for your residents. Your multifamily is $2 per month, which is $24 per multifamily unit. And then you've got your non-residential properties that are charged $4 per month per 3,000 square feet of impervious surface. And non-residential lots are calculated. It's based on a formula. It's based on the amount of impervious surface on that piece of property. So obviously the more impervious surface that property has, the higher the rate that they're charged. So this table was taken straight out of your 2022 budget. As you can see, the total stormwater utility budget for 2022 is $3.2 million, and your total revenues to be collected from your utility customers are $1.175 million. And that obviously leaves a gap and a shortfall of $2 million to be funded from other sources, whether it be your reserve funding or other funding sources. And I think as we saw in the previous presentation, there is a shortfall. So one of the things that we did as part of our analysis here, we took the 2022 DeKalb County Digest and we thoroughly investigated it, reviewed it, and we found that there were several parcels that are not paying currently into the fund. We estimate about $55,000 per year is going uncollected currently. Some of those are from townhomes, maybe newer townhomes that just haven't been added to the register yet, but some of them also are public agencies, such as DeKalb County, MARTA, Georgia Power. So that's just something to note here, that there's $55,000 uncollected in your current revenue. So your stormwater fund here, this is how it's broken down, at least for your expenses. You've got your various codes here. The 4320 code, your stormwater maintenance, obviously is the bulk of your stormwater utility, and we'll break that down here on the next slide. So your 4320 account code, your biggest expense on here is, of course, the repairs and maintenance. So, what is repairs and maintenance? So, the repairs and maintenance is generally your emergency repairs, your routine maintenance like cleaning sediment and debris, sinkholes, things like that you routinely have to deal with to basically keep your system up and running. And those are the minimum requirements that are part of your MS4 permit, which is the requirement from the EPD that you maintain permit compliance with your stormwater infrastructure. Also included in your repairs and maintenance category, whether right or wrong, but it is included in there, is proactive measures such as increasing capacity of storm drains that are not, or storm systems that don't have sufficient capacity. Also doing water quality projects and various proactive projects to improve the quality and benefits to your citizens. So what you'll notice here, of course, is from 2019 to 2022, the drastic increase in repairs and maintenance costs. So $193,000 in 2019 to $1.5 million in 2022. And the 2021 budget of $700,000 was actually increased through a mid-year budget, mainly due to emergency repairs and unforeseen items. But I think it's pretty clear that that's an expenditure you're probably going to be anticipating in the ongoing years of the utility. Next slide. This is just a list of some of the projects that were in your 2021 budget that were completed. You can see most of these were repair projects, some of them were emergency projects, maybe a couple of them were proactive projects. We also included the list of the 2022 projects that are anticipated. Again, most of these are going to be proactive projects, some are not, some are just basic maintenance. But this is just a list of the projects that were used to establish your current budget for 2022.
Quick question on the last slide. You had black, on the 22 projects, you had black text and the blue text. What's the difference between the two?
So the first 6 on 2022 are the ones that we either are currently underway or have completed. So 7 through 11 are the ones we've yet to actually begin.
Thank you.
And I will point out that the first 3 are, emergency repairs.
So in 2021, you notice one of the projects was to do the Stormwater Inventory project. Pond was hired to do that project, and as part of your MS4 compliance, you are required to have an inventory of your entire stormwater system. and you're required to inspect it every 5 years. Every piece of pipe, every structure has to be inspected every 5 years. So there's methodology to that, but that was the main driver behind the Stormwater Locate project. Of course, y'all obtained the stormwater infrastructure from DeKalb County. Some of that infrastructure was included in the GIS information you had, some of it wasn't. But that was the purpose of the project, to actually deploy out crews to go out and physically locate each structure, access that structure, take pictures inside the pipes, assess the condition of those pipes, and then we took that data, got it in the GIS system, and we assessed it, and we analyzed it to see what maintenance and what maintenance would be needed down the line in the future. We also created some dashboards that, like this example on the screen here, for hopefully easier ability to review the system, keep it updated, and then report your print out your annual reports, which is a requirement for your MS4 permit. So another one of the objectives, really the primary objective, or the other primary objective besides MS4 compliance, was to get a handle on the cost of maintenance that we would anticipate your system will need over the coming years. And we broke down the maintenance costs into 3 categories. And that first category was inaccessible structures. So what we found when we were doing the analysis, or when we were doing the field work, 30% roughly of your infrastructure was inaccessible. And by inaccessible, we mean it didn't have a manhole lid, it was buried, or the lid was sealed shut, or it was landscaped over. There are a lot of various reasons why we couldn't access the structure, and even access the pipes. So we put together an estimate on what it would cost to actually get access to those structures and into that pipe system. That's that $1.9 million, or roughly $2 million estimate there. So that was one of the categories we broke down, because essentially to get full compliance with your MS4 permit, you need to gain access to those structures and those pipes to be able to inspect them. The second category was just sediment and debris removal that we found. We found several pipes that were just filled with sediment and just over years of not being maintained, needing to be cleaned out. And it was a substantial amount, so that's obviously why that number is so high, 3.2 million. We also found several structures that were showing signs of corrosion, mostly corrugated metal pipe. As you know, a lot of the developments, a lot of the cities around here, it's a problem really all over the country. That corrugated metal pipe was being used as the primary material for storm infrastructure. And that has a lifespan of 25 to 30 years, and here we are 30 plus years now, and we're seeing a lot of failures in corrugated metal pipe. So that's what's driving that $3.7 million cost. So the total came out to $9 million approximately, and then, it's just, which needs to be mentioned too, is that 30% that we couldn't access. Once we do get access into it and assess it, it could increase the other numbers, because we couldn't see what we couldn't see.
I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Yeah.
I do have one question on the inaccessible. Is there a handle on issues with things that just aren't accessible because they're on private property, there's no easements, or is that question outside of the scope?
So some of that is outside of the scope, so you're only responsible for what's in the right-of-way. Or let me say this, we only inspected what's inside Chamblee right-of-way. Your level of service and your extent of service does include some easements that go outside the right-of-way. So yes, I think that's a next step in this process, is to inspect those assets that you have that are in easements. But that takes coordination with the property owner and a lot more effort to get to them. But I don't think this number really includes those items, because we didn't attempt to inspect most of those structures because they were not in the Chamblee right-of-way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, just from a conversation that happened earlier today, the mayor and Mr. Walker were also at with DeKalb, that's a problem that I don't think anyone has a handle on, because from what we were told by the DeKalb County's head of Public Works, is they just didn't plan, and they don't think they've moved on a lot of what used to be theirs. So I think it's a problem we're going to have to unravel in some areas.
That is true. Any input, Courtney?
So I will just add that as a part of the original inventory and assessment, we did collect the plats. So we do have an inventory of the plats that have the drainage easements. What we did not do, though, is then go out into the field and actually step foot on those easements, because that would take a lot of coordination. And then to Councilmember Beat's point, there might be a lot of what was previously DeKalb County's pipe that, since there is no easement, we would not consider that at this time. Per our EOS LOS policy, we would not consider that ours. It would be considered private.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
And I think the other important item on this is that this $9 million budget is not included in your current budgeting for 21 or 22. So, this slide just pretty much illustrates the trend, right? And it goes back to the earlier presentation. Your revenues, your expenditures are far exceeding your revenues, which obviously is not sustainable. We're going to be looking at ways to increase revenue and decrease expenditures. That's going to be the only way to get this into balanced budget. So we did do a comparison with other municipalities. As you can see, Chamblee's well below other communities in the area. Of course, given there is some economies of scale with population size, and then of course the amount of impervious surface in an area, but other communities have recognized this issue and have made adjustments to their utility accordingly. So the rate structure, the way it breaks down, and we broke it down per these communities to show you, these are the variables that are used to determine your rate. Equivalent residential unit, which is essentially the average square footage of impervious surface on a single-family residential property. It varies based on communities, and that number is somewhat flexible in some ways not. You need to be somewhere near your equivalent, impervious square footage, but that's the variable that's used to calculate your ERU for your non-residential properties. So there's some nuances there, but I think it's fairly straightforward, but you can see what the other communities are charging and how they do their ERUs here. And what we're noting here is that Chamblee's is the same as DeKalb County's, and it's been that way since 2016 when y'all obtained the stormwater infrastructure. And then also other communities have adopted annual increases, either connected with CPI or a set percentage rate to deal with obviously ongoing increasing costs.
That 1792 for Decatur accurate?
That is.
Well, I'm looking back at the previous slide, and they're generating $2 million in total fees. So 25,000 people times 17.
Yeah, it's just a smaller community with, And do you have any other insight talking to them?
Yeah, so it was actually in Decatur when they were doing the stormwater master plan. They have a tiered structure, so the less impervious you have, the less amount you pay. More impervious you have, and that's for residential properties. So the more impervious you have as a residential, the more you pay. So that was the average of those tiers, from the low tier to the high tier. So that's where you get that 1792.
But you don't have a number where we need to be yet. You're still part of the analysis.
Yeah, so that's
the next slide.
It's a good segue into the next slide.
I should have known. I always do that.
So part of this analysis was to look at various rate increases and see what kind of revenue that generates and how it compares. And we'll make some recommendations, but this is just a breakdown. Again, you can increase the rate, you can adjust the ERU, and there's sort of a balancing mechanism on coming to the right number, right? But this is generally how it's done. This is not, unique to the city of Chamblee. But these are the scenarios we looked at: $6, $8, $10, and then for the rate per ERU, and then adjusting your ERU from 3,000 to 2,500 square feet, which, when you do that, your non-residential property owners pay more based on the formula, okay? So we put this graph together. It shows the results of the various scenarios and the revenue generated. Again, this is based on the DeKalb County Digest and the current digest. We put a line in there to show you where the 2022 budget is. I don't think I need to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I think it's pretty clear where to meet the current budget where it needs to be. So we sat with Courtney and team, and we came up with some recommendations that we could talk about here. So first and foremost, correcting the DeKalb County Digest, right? That's $55,000 of uncollected money that you ought to be able to get fairly easily. And that's just collecting fees from all the contributing properties, including DeKalb County.
So agencies like DeKalb and BARDA are required to pay them?
It depends on agreements that you have in place or do not have in place. But it's just like the way stormwater has been being recognized is just like any other utility. Their impervious service is contributing to the community stormwater infrastructure system just as much as everybody else. Same goes with churches and other things that generally are, have some tax exempt status, but that's why it's a utility. So yes, technically they should pay. But again, you could have agreements that they don't. Increasing the monthly rate from $4 to $8, okay? And that's the annual, or the monthly, the $4, which is $48 annually, to $96 per ERU annually. That affects the residential and the non-residential customers. And then in conjunction with that, reducing from 3,000 to 2,500, that affects the non-residential properties only. So with that gets you to, and I'll go back to this slide. So that is the $8 scenario at 2,500 square feet, which gets you to about $2.6 million. Okay, so obviously that's the increase in the rate that we're recommending, but there's also a decrease in expenditure that goes along with that. And those are things that we recommend doing soon. Some things maybe down the line, or maybe a couple years, 2024, to address that $9 million that you have. That's, I think it's inevitable you're going to have to do that work. One for permit compliance, one for just your routine maintenance and your repairs that are needed in the system. Perhaps you can pursue a bond, loans. I mean, there are other mechanisms of funding that you can pursue that can help. And then future options for getting to a $3 million utility, which is probably where your utility needs to be. But again, the 2.6 we feel will at least accomplish your minimum standards for your MS4 permitting and allow you some emergency reserve to handle emergency situations. I think you're going to be hard pressed to take care of any proactive projects, but that's where we are. The other option, of course, is to do the annual, which I recommend to every utility. To me, when you establish that static utility that's not going to change, you're setting yourself up for future failure, as obviously inflation right now is through the roof, right? So you need to account for inflationary adjustments, or you should. I mean, that's a recommendation, and I think you're going to see a lot more communities adopting at least an inflationary based.
We were probably paying DeKalb County $4 a month to not repair the systems. So
for years that's been the case.
Yes. So now, did you somewhere in there? Is it also raising the rates for the apartments? Is that
correct? So the apartments still would be, well, you're going to go to half or
So actually, most of our apartments, well, it depends. So we have some apartments that are considered commercial. Actually, no, I apologize. Apartments are considered commercial. So that would be based on the square footage. Where the ordinance says multifamily, that would be the condos, and right now that is at half an ERU.
I just thought I saw on one of his slides, he had something like a 0.5 metric for apartments or something.
Yeah, apartments right now.
Try to apply that slide to this slide, and I just don't see that.
So we actually had a lot of discussion about that because a lot of the newer apartments are the mixed use, and those are considered more commercial, non-residential, and they're charged based on the impervious. And there was also discrepancy when we looked at the tax digest as to how some of these apartments were charged. Were they charged based on the single-family half an ERU, or were they charged based on impervious? We decided to keep it charged as impervious, but we can change.
I think the question is the apartments are charged as commercial users per ERUs, and the townhomes and the multifamily condos, those are the ones with the 0.5. And did we make a change with that? I thought we had discussed that.
So we did discuss that. At this time, we did not provide it as a recommendation, but we can certainly consider keeping the townhomes, the multifamily at half an ERU, or we can also bump that up to 0.75 ERU or even 1 ERU. So that is where we kind of stand on that piece of it.
Yeah, and I have a few questions about sinkholes. Some of the sinkholes are caused because the stormwater pipes are broken and they're, causing sinkholes. A lot of them are caused by pool repairs by DeKalb County. You pay for that?
Some are caused by water main leaks.
Water main leaks,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, a lot of them. Where the water, but that's still DeKalb County.
It is. That would be DeKalb, and they should be motivated to fix those very quickly. But yes, you're right. And so an investigation of sinkholes is generally done. A geotech or an engineer would go out and assess what's causing it. But quite frequently they're caused by failing stormwater infrastructure.
well, yes. But
Or flooding.
I know of a few that are caused by just poor repair
Sure.
by the county.
So if you look at the repairs that we've made, the sinkhole repairs we've made, those are based upon stormwater issues that we've had. So in 22 alone, we've had 3 so far at Hood Avenue, Dresden Court, and Dresden Drive that are contributed to stormwater.
I'm asking for a friend. This rate increase, or expenditure increase, utility increase, whatever we want to call it. Now, for people that are old and on fixed incomes and stuff like that, they don't have a way of opting out of this at all, do they? This is like, you got to pay your water bill, you got to pay your stormwater utility bill and all that stuff. Okay. Just asking for a friend.
Yeah. Generally not. There are ways to get credits, but usually, and now I don't know about in Chamblee, but in other places, like in Rossville, for instance, there are ways to get credits for doing like roof drain collection for various water quality or water improvements that help reduce your discharge. So you could put rain collection things and do various things, water or bioretention, for instance, things in your yard. So yeah. So the total utility, this is just another chart that shows what that does, those various scenarios or various recommendations to balance the budget. at least in the next 2 years. And again, the permit compliance, I think, is primary objective. You need to be in compliance with your MS4 permit. But then, looking at any proactive projects you might want to do in the city and for the community would have to be considered, which is not in this right here.
And just to provide a little context, we began looking at this back in 2017, 2018, at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, because we did not have a good understanding of our system in terms of the age and what the issues were. We had actually been pretty fortunate not to have as many repairs. However, as we were beginning that process, we saw significant repairs come through in 2020 and 2021, and then again in 2022 we've seen those as well. So the intent of having the funds set aside from reserves for those big repairs, they've helped. They've gotten us through 3 years with fairly significant repairs needing to be done. But at this point, the reserves have fallen off because of that use, and now we need to look at how we create a sustainable system. $9 million that's foreseen issues. That's not necessarily the unforeseen issues. Right. It's an estimate. And so, you look at $9 million worth of repairs and you think $1.5 million a year, you can kind of multiply that out and think how long that would take. We could go with a lower fee schedule or a lower fee and try to do less projects, but these are emergency projects and we really can't not repair something that's affecting a road or flooding, potentially flooding houses or structures. So that's the situation we're in now. As it was mentioned earlier, we were at a meeting with the county. There was some discussion on their stormwater efforts. They're working on the stormwater master plan, which they have not had to date. And that's something that they recognize. A lot of these structures were put in the ground with no maintenance plan or replacement plan. We know we have the corrugated metal pipes throughout the city. We know it's just a matter of time. We're trying to get ahead of it, and we're trying to resolve some of the issues that are either out there or potentially could occur.
It's my understanding that enterprise funds are supposed to be revenue neutral, like they're supposed to be like the projection of 23 and 24. They're supposed to line up, and it's my understanding they haven't paid for themselves in a very long time, if ever.
Actually, if you go back to 2017, 2016, we weren't making the repairs that we're doing now.
Right.
And so what you really saw was we would do some maintenance, but not much, frankly,
right.
With what we had. We would try to do, $250,000, $300,000 a year in maintenance and improvements, but they weren't going in and replacing large structures. We started having, and really I can remember the first one was, we had a significant sinkhole over near Canfield Park that we had to do a significant repair on, and then they started occurring more frequently after that. And so that's when you see in 2020 really the increases in costs. We did increase our expenditures to try to get in front of some of those because we did recognize where some of the issues were, and that's why we started budgeting a little bit more every year for those repairs. However, we budgeted this year. We didn't anticipate the 3 sinkholes that we had necessarily. So we're trying to stay ahead of it with what we have, but at this point, our reserves are at a point where we need to make some changes.
And this is a system that the county neglected to maintain for
50 years.
I was gonna say 20, but I didn't want to be mean to DeKalb County, but you could say 50.
They recognize that too.
Yeah, so it's not like, why did Chamblee do this? We're trying, that's the reason why we took it over, and that's why we're doing this, so.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're at 50 years of the whole system that was put in before.
Right, with a 35-year projected lifespan.
Failing.
So,
Well, as I mentioned,
So
this is,
if there's structures that are under state limits, is that's still us that has to fix that?
no, that is GDOT. So GDOT is responsible for their own infrastructure under their roads. However, they're maintained at their schedule. Although GDOT is pretty good about maintaining their stuff. And generally, they've required concrete pipe in their infrastructure for a long time. So odds are there's concrete pipe. In some cases, there's not, though. And that's the thing going forward. All replacements are done with concrete pipe that has a 100-year plus lifespan. Versus before, corrugated metal had a 25. Just anecdotally in my career, 25 years ago, I remember doing projects with corrugated metal pipe and knowing this has a 25-year lifespan. So I guess in 25 years, there's going to be a lot of failed pipes to replace. But
We get enough graffiti painted on all of that stuff. It might extend their life.
True. But this, like I said, this is prevalent across the country. This is not unique to Chamblee.
So, John, those recommendations that they're making, what is I'm looking at you now, putting you on the spot. So what is your comfort zone? What would be your ask? Because I know where I'm at, but.
Well, I think, put me on the spot here.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to do that, but I mean, if you know me, you know I love numbers, and because numbers don't lie, and when your outgo is more significant than your income, you're challenged. And as mentioned, we were at a meeting with the county earlier today, and the county acknowledges this is not bad-mouthing the county, this is just an acknowledgement of something they already understand, that there was a lot of neglect for a long, long time, and now it's things are starting to crumble. So we took this on, and as much as I don't like to talk about paying more for anything, I mean, I think you have to. It's not enough just to balance it out. You have to get ahead at some point. And so I don't have a vote on council any longer, but if I did have one, I would certainly be going with at least the $10 and try to knock some of this out. But I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I just want to know what your ask of us would be to actually get ahead in this.
Well, I do agree with the recommendation to go from 4 to 8. I think one of the things that we need to do looking forward is to go with a bond. I think some sort of loan or bond and get the best interest rate we can get. But to make as much of those $9 million worth of repairs as soon as possible, because that will save us money in the long term. So there's some work that we need to do to get ready for such a loan or bond or however that would move forward. I think moving forward from 4 to 8 at this point would give us time to make some of those adjustments, do some of the projects that we want to do, and then I do think that a plan to go to 10 ultimately within the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years would be appropriate. Using some of those funds to pay off the bond that we would take to make the immediate repairs, but recognizing that those are only the foreseen repairs that we need to make, not necessarily the unforeseen. So we still need to build that capacity to do more projects.
And is this something that's going to move forward to Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion from council on this item? So you'll need to come back on Tuesday with a recommendation of how to move forward on this. very good. Thank you, sir. All right, so next up we have the first read of ordinances, and this is, the first item on that is the tap room. Was there any further discussion on that item?
Just move it to first read for Tuesday.
And the council meeting time amendment ordinance, did we want to have discussion on that? This was the suggestion to move the council meeting times, the work session and the council meeting both to 6 p.m.
Is there any thought on moving both to 7? It's always a challenge to get out of work and here by 6 o'clock.
I think the consideration would, it's also some consideration of staff's time as well, having them out even later 2 nights versus the 1 night.
I won't die on that hill, so that sounds like a good counter to my request.
Yeah.
Provisionally?
That's fine. No,
I gotta get clean before Tuesday. I don't care about Thursday.
No, I think that's,
I'm willing.
no, that's fine. I always have to think which time is it and which day and which meeting is, so 6 o'clock is fine.
And what we have proposed here, because we currently have the time in the ordinance, and an ordinance requires 2 reads to change. So what we've proposed here is an ordinance that actually eliminates the time from the ordinance, and then next month we would create a resolution that would set the time. And that way, if we wanted to make a change going forward, we could do so through a resolution, and that would just be done in 1 meeting instead of the 2 meetings. So that's what we have for your consideration tonight. On Tuesday will be the first read of an ordinance that actually eliminates the time in the current Code of Ordinances.
Very good. So then later, we wouldn't have to go through this again if this didn't work.
If this didn't work, then we'd just
Change the time.
put a resolution on the agenda, and same month we can make that change.
Very good. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Did you want to?
Could be provisional, to your point, Leslie. We decided it doesn't work.
Makes it provisional.
Yeah, we can always go
We
back
just
and
change it like
quickly.
every month, right? What do you call it? Daylight savings time?
Yeah.
Move it up, move it back.
Very good. Under second read of ordinance, we'll have the stormwater management ordinance amendment. Any discussion on that? And the amendment to the alcohol ordinance for the tap rooms. Any discussion on that? Very good.
So wait, that's confusing. Some are, both of the, tap rooms is, I think that we said earlier, one was a typo, it's not supposed to be under second read, or is that, is that because of never mind. I already know my own question. It has to do with the PUD map versus the actual ordinance. One is the actual ordinance, one is the map.
This is the alcohol ordinance that will be amended.
Right.
That's the second read, and then the map and the UDO is the first read.
Second, gotcha.
Very good.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
No.
Very good. Under Mayor and Council items, we have one item this evening from Mayor Pro Tem Robson on the Asphalt Art Initiative grant.
There is grant money available, and I have been told that if you apply for it, you're probably going to get it. For asphalt art, meaning like if we were to commission an artist to come and paint the scramble, or commission artists to paint the utility boxes or the AT&T boxes and things like that. The grant that is available right now is from the Bloomberg Philanthropy Group, and but the problem is that the request to pay for a grant writer has to come before council, or at least that is the understanding. I'd like to see that change, but right now, that's where we stand. So I'm asking for the city to allow the Arts Commission to been part of their budget. If the city doesn't want to do it outright out of our own budget, to hire a grant writer to apply for this Bloomberg grant from the Bloomberg Philanthropy Group. This grant will be a template for other grants requesting money from places like the Atlanta Arts Council, the National Endowment for the Arts, et cetera, et cetera. So it will be more important than just asking for some money for some paint to paint the crosswalk or whatever. So I would like to see that initiated.
Do you know, John, do you know what the financial impact is? Do you know what this would cost?
We would need to go seek out a grant writer, so we would issue probably just a request for interest and seek out someone and take in proposals.
So would Tuesday's motion might be to direct staff to go out and do the research and then come back with us on that, or?
Yeah.
So we would know what we're voting for?
Well, I think that considering the cost, I think we do have to consider that. If this is money that is going to come out of the Arts Commission budget, I really don't think that it should ever come before council. I think that that's something that the Art Commission should be voting on and deciding how to utilize the money that we've granted them for a budget. But right now, I don't want to be shell-shocked by the cost of a grant writer. So I'd like to see this.
Elmer has his hand up. Yes.
Just from my experience of working with grant writers through other nonprofits and stuff, typically grant writers receive a percentage of the grant for their efforts. So a lot of them work basically on commission. And if the grant doesn't come through, they don't get paid. If it does come through, they get a predetermined percentage of it. Very often, depending on the size of the grant, smaller grants typically seem to run around 10%.
I have a question for you then, Elmer. Within that contract that we might have with the grant writer, is it also their responsibility to make sure that the grant properly administered?
No, they just get the money in. It's up to the organization who receives the funds to then ensure compliance. Okay.
So I think that that's probably something that we also need to consider is the cost of administering, whatever you want to call it, the actual expenditure of the grant money. So I'd like to see that put together rather than...
Yeah, it sounds like we may want to start with just, having staff solicit RFPs from grant writers. And, again, because not all grant writers work the same. Some will work for a flat fee. And some are open to handling things afterwards. So this kind of depends on who you get responding.
So, yeah, I'd like to direct staff, and I think it probably ought to come back before council just so that we can kind of have our little say in it and understand the workings.
Okay. So just a couple of comments on that. Typically, I think what we're looking for here is someone to help establish, as you said, the templates for future grants. So typically that's going to be done by someone who charges a fee rather than a percentage. A lot of the grant writers have gone more towards the fees structure rather than the percentage. We do have someone on staff that can administer the grant, so that is not something we'll need to be concerned with necessarily. We do have someone on staff that can do that. But in terms of writing the grant, I think it would be best to look for someone to put together the templates for this and future grants. I think that's something we can do, and I can get you, or not I, but we, the staff, can get you the 2 or 3 proposals to do that.
Okay. And, we did talk at the retreat about the need for some grant writing capacity within the city. Is it different from writing grants for an arts initiative? Is that different than writing grants for some of the things that we talked about?
Typically, yes, and I'll say that from the perspective of a good grant writer in the field of the arts is going to know more what they're looking for specifically from this, and they're also going to know what grants are more available. Whereas someone who deals with transportation, they're going to come at it from knowing what the federal requirements are. So I won't say that you need a grant writer for every department, but I do think that when it comes to specific items like arts or parks, those are typically grant writers that understand what grants are out there and then the nuances of those specific grants.
So this might not be, it might be a template, but it's not necessarily the end of using a grant writer for the arts, because we're going to want their knowledge of availability of other grants and things like that.
That's correct.
So I think that's also something that we got to play with, So, yeah. All right. So on Tuesday night, we are going to direct staff. Sounds good. Any other questions? All right, next up.
We have citizen comments. It's your chance to come to the microphone and spend 3 minutes with us telling us anything you want to tell us.
How nice we are.
The city clerk, if you just tell us your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ura. I'm at 2708 Frontier Trail, and I did not know you guys were going to talk about stormwater tonight, and neither does Courtney know that I'm here, but I've been working with her and Heike over the last few months regarding the stormwater ditch that services much of my neighborhood upstream, Shellford, Dresden, Frontier Trail, and concludes into St. Pius that flows to Arrow Creek, where you guys are working on the project with Arrow Creek and Dresden Park. There's some issues I have with the way their current ordinance is written and the open channel ditch that services all of that stormwater flow, and as you guys discussed tonight, the lack of probably understanding by residents of what's supposed to be their responsibility versus the city and what was previously DeKalb County. Some of my concerns I'm going to address for you right now, and I'm glad that you're having discussions with DeKalb County, but some of the things I'd like for you to see, and I actually had some of the pond guys come out on my property. Being home, working from home with COVID, you kind of meet all the people that are going to come out, and so I was able to talk with a few people. But I want to share with you some issues regarding water line breaks and the lack of stormwater controls that DeKalb County is putting in when addressing those, and the sediment releases that are happening that are contributing to some of the stormwater impacts that we're currently facing. And if we're going to spend all this money as citizens, that you should be aware of that's happening. Just give a little background. I have 20 years in environmental protection, formerly worked with EPD. Don't have a lot of experience in stormwater specifically, enough to feel a little dangerous with it, but have enough knowledge more than maybe your general person. So Courtney's probably aware of that, Heike. I'm the one out there with the broom sweeping up every little sediment because it's ending up in my yard. But just wanted to share with you guys some of the impacts from a stormwater, or from a water line break that happened in January, and all of the runoff and sediment. Now, I did discuss all this with DeKalb County. They did come out and try to shovel the street, and I know probably Courtney had a crew come out for about, I would say, almost 3 weeks trying to sweep the road. There's still a lot of exposed dirt, so anytime we have a heavy rain, some of the things that you're experiencing, I moved in my home in fall of 2019, and the rains have been pretty heavy since then. Maybe before we were in some drought periods where you may not have seen that, but the lack of stormwater control by DeKalb County, and you can see in those photos, that's just one example. There was an example in the fall of 2019 prior to my purchasing of the home, a very similar thing just up the street from there.
And when I talk with residents, my neighbors, they say that's not an uncommon practice. And so that also is my understanding of why the ditch that's servicing my whole neighborhood is also full of sediment. So any of these heavy rains that are happening, it's backflowing onto my property. So as you can imagine, I can't get out there and shovel all of that. I just want to make you guys aware as you're discussing with DeKalb County that they should be putting their stormwater controls in place. I did go to EPD and explain the situation with that because that's fairly egregious. There's controls they could be using to prevent all that sediment runoff. But just want to make sure you guys are aware and have that consideration and the importance of, you know, I know it's an extra cost, but the importance of managing our stormwater going forward. Great, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council this evening? See no one else. John, do we have an executive session this evening?
We do not.
Very good. Anybody want to get out of here? We're adjourned.